Hi, I'm Mark Hummel. I hope you're enjoying the Harmonica Party and the other content that we post on our channel. Now you can become part of the show for the price of a cheap cup of coffee. For $3 a month, you can help bring the blues and the stories to you. All right, hi everybody. My name is Mark Hummel. This is Mark Hummel's Harmonica Party, and I'm sitting here with the great Curtis Salgado from Portland, Oregon, my longtime friend. And we were just talking a minute ago about how Curtis got started on the harmonica and in the blues, and it was so good, I think we need to make an episode out of it. So I think we left off that you were a teenager in Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah, you know what, if to kind of reassess where, it's kind of like how I fell into the California scene.
That's what we want to,
and the whole, yeah.
Okay.
Because I was just looking at, where'd your book go?
The book's back there.
Yeah. That was it's a book about the Bay Area blues.
Right.
Which has all these great pictures in it with, what's his name? What was the guy? Maurice McInnes.
Maurice
McInnes. This guy could sing so well, and also
and played racked harp and guitar.
Right. Yeah. Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I saw him play guitar, but when he sang, I saw him do Mustang Sally, which of course everybody thinks is overdone, but no, when you saw him do it,
no,
because he sounded like Wilson Pickett.
Yeah, no,
he could do the high. He could do that really high, crack his voice and whistle. And he was remarkable, man. Did a bad Jimmy Reed.
Yeah, he did a great Jimmy
Tough Reed. Jimmy Reed.
Really great Jimmy Reed.
And matter of fact, after seeing him at Eli's Mile High Club, he did Mustang Sally. And I went back to Eugene and Portland. I went back to Portland and started doing Mustang Sally.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I never,
well, I want you to tell people about.
I couldn't sing it as good as him.
You and Gary Smith, and how Gary kind of opened up the whole scene for you.
That
was interesting.
The California scene and the Bay Area scene is huge, and I would never had any idea to preface this. I had no idea that all of these wonderful, our heroes were down here. It was just, I didn't know the history of Oakland or Richmond or or the Bay Area. So here it is. I am playing in a band. We called ourselves the Nighthawks, not to be confused with the guys out of Washington, D.C., and we had a strong presence in Eugene, Oregon, and up and down the I-5 corridor in that area. And I'm playing, and it's at a place called Murphy's and Me. And just to give a little history, I don't know if it was the same way down here in California, but in Oregon, they ran through a legislation. I can't even say it. They ran, twister. Yeah, it is. They ran it through with two musicians who had the wherewithal and thinking forward about seeing if they could get music in bars, in restaurants, just in places that serve food.
So you think prior to that, it was only in ballrooms,
exactly.
Big concert arenas, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And so they were just like, if you had a tavern, that's the word. If you had a tavern, they were trying to, and see, this was it was a win-win situation. If you brought in live music, it'd bring in customers, and the customers, and then the LCC, the Liquor Commission of Oregon, and all these put it together, and they ran through the government and through put a bill forward that made it so you could have live music in taverns and in restaurants and bars. That changed everything.
Yeah.
And I was coming up just then. I was about 18, fresh out of high school, 18, 19, and they started to have live music. One of the places was called Murphy's and Me in Eugene, Oregon. And I'm playing them. Now, this is about 4 years later. I'm playing at Murphy's and Me. But just so you folks understand, it's like, that changed everything. So all of a sudden, you had a place.
How old were you?
I started playing in bars when I was 18. Yeah, at this place called the Roman Forum. Which was basically not, but close to one of those chicken wire bars.
Really?
It was a tough joint.
In other words, there weren't a lot of Romans.
All of these all these bikers and college kids.
Right.
you know, and
Yeah.
that's basically saying gatches. What am I saying? That's basically like saying matches and gasoline.
Right.
Trouble is going to happen.
Trouble is going to brew.
Yeah. So back at this, I'm standing playing on stage singing, and there's this guy comes up and he looks us over like, who are these guys? And he's looking around at the end of a song. He's nice. He goes, who are you guys? I introduce him. Well, who are you? And he says, my name is Gary Smith. And I knew who he was. And he couldn't believe it. It blew his mind. Basically, it's like, you're Gary Smith from San Jose? I've got your EP.
Right.
He goes, you got my EP? He had an EP that was basically 2 pieces of cardboard taped together that had his record.
Right. Right.
And he had a great tone and stuff. And matter of fact, there's a picture of him on the front. And,
right, kind of a blurry picture.
Yeah. And Steve Gomes.
Gomes on bass. John Garcia on guitar.
Yeah. So I had that, and he couldn't believe it. And so we made fast friends and stuff, and he set me straight. He was like, you're using the wrong kind of microphone. I had a microphone that was the Green Bullet, which is it's
a much bigger, heavier mic.
It's
than
no, is it bigger?
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's a little bit wider, I think. It's about so big, whereas the aesthetic.
I think it's about this big.
See, the audience isn't going to know what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
I think it's about this big.
Yeah. So that's what she said. No. So he goes, you got the wrong kind of microphone. I do, you're looking for a JT30, a static. What the hell is that and stuff? We made fast friends, like I said, and I don't know how the connection did grow. And I called him up. I would call him up when he was back in San Jose, but it wasn't very long after that. And I'm going to say a few months just to move the story along, that he said, why don't you come down here to San Jose, and I'm doing a recording, and he's already involved in it in San Francisco, which will turn out to be
Blue Bay.
Right. Yeah, Blue Bay. Which had, and I have, this is the punchline of this, is like, I go, okay, I'll come down here. And this would be the first time that I ever, I think, got on a jet plane. And
wow.
I flew down here and got together with Gary, and we immediately went to the studio, Gary Smith and Steve Gomes and myself.
Junior Watson
wasn't there, but you're going ahead. This is like, I didn't meet Junior for years.
Okay.
This is Steve Gomes. Gary Smith picks me up at the airport, and we're going to San Francisco. I've never been there. And of course, I am awestruck at the city. And I mean, I'm in San Francisco. How cool is that?
Right.
And I'd never been there. And we walk into a studio, and High Tide Harris is in there, and he's sitting around. I've never heard of the guy. And Sonny Rhodes is sitting in there. And I'm hearing Gary Smith play harmonica. Again, I remember I had the EP, and they're playing the playbacks from this stuff. And there's Sonny Rhodes is doing the song, and they just brought it up on the board. Keep Holding On by Junior Parker.
Right.
And I hadn't heard the Junior Parker version yet, but I'll tell you something, Sonny Rhodes sounded just like Junior Parker.
Yep.
Oh my God, he was just smooth singing, the timbre, everything. And keep holding on, baby.
He was his valet.
And that's what he said.
Yeah, he told me that when I first met him.
And I was stunned. And here's the real punchline. Over there, sitting there, they introduced me to Luther Tucker. And I'm like, Luther Tucker? I'll never forget this. Like, Luther Tucker? I'm sounding like Luther Tucker, little Walter Luther Tucker. So I still, just to throw this in, as I listen to Little Walter, I bet you 2 or 3 times every week.
Right.
I just heard him the day before yesterday.
Right.
I played him all day, sit there playing, and I catch something new and different, or breathing, or, I was practicing on Off the Wall, which I've never done in public. But
seriously?
Yeah, I've never played this song, but by God, I know it. So that said, Luther Tucker is there, and this new guy that sings like Junior Parker. Go back, Luther Tucker. I mean, I was what? What are you doing here? And as time went on, what happened was
He
now.
said, I was looking forward to it. I can be
Here's
at
another-
it.
Here's another ditty from my
A
ex.
little ditty from my ex-city. Sweet home.
Charlie Musselwhite is on the record.
Now, was he there?
No,
when
no, he wasn't
wasn't
there.
there, okay.
Possibly Gary could tell me. I haven't seen Gary in a long time. But anyhow,
Well, you'll see him tonight.
I am looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But he's the one who launched it. So here's the punchline for that. So I would come back to San Francisco. I discovered all of these blues guys are there. And I would keep on discovering that over and year after year. It's like, so-and-so lives here. So, Jimmy McCracklin lives in Oakland.
right.
Johnny Guitar Watson's in Oakland and in LA. And then I realized how big LA was.
Yeah.
It seems like I had my radar out. I would have had my musical radar, but I didn't, it's just, it wasn't until I got to meet folks that I realized all of these blues greats were here in California because, they're going to go where the weather suits their clothes. And as everybody does. So, man, you and I, Sonny Rhodes. So that leads me to finding all these people and Gary Smith. And Gary Smith and I, he hit me to a whole bunch of stuff. Reggae. He took me to a record store.
Right. He was really
He took
into
me
that,
to a record store and said, you want to get this and this and this. This guy right here, man. He pulled it out. And it was Bob Marley.
Yeah.
And it was a Bob Marley, Lee Scratch Perry.
Oh,
and the record itself was like a hard, it wasn't your typical, LP. It was like made of glass or something. I still have it.
Wow.
And it's the best Bob Marley, all that stuff before he redid his stuff with the guy, what's his name, Chris Blackwell.
Oh, yeah. Island.
Yeah, Island Records. Right. So Gary turned me on to that. He got me straightened out with the Static Harmonica, and I think
Static Mike, yeah.
Static Mike. Rod Piazza was the king of the hill at the time. Rod Piazza could cut heads and and he was. And I already had the Bacon Fat record.
Right.
So, but I never met the guy, and Gary had, and he's seen him, and God, he had a reel-to-reel tape of George Harmonica Smith live in a club, and live in an LA club, and it was hair-raising.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the
I
bands,
remember I got like a cassette tape that Gomes had apparently, Steve Gomes had gone over to George's house and just tape recorded all of his 45s.
before anybody had
Before
the
anybody
stuff.
had them, yeah. So I had that stuff really early on.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And what a nice guy Steve Gomes.
Gomes is a great guy. Yeah.
Great bass player. Great.
But it's funny, it was such a small world back then.
Yeah.
It was
my world opened up.
I mean, but I'm just saying, it was like this group of people that, like we all kind of got to know each other because we had this common interest. And it was like such an exciting thing to get to meet all these people you're talking about.
Yeah.
And get turned on to different records and that whole thing,
Look, man, for me, some white kid from Eugene, Oregon, which isn't exactly ground zero for soul and blues, and I'm coming down in Oakland, Richmond, and seeing not only people from the Caucasian community, the Black community, or the people that you admire, and basically are just knocked out by it. It taught me, the whole reason music and jazz, it taught me about all segregation, racism, it got me into the Civil War. You don't know any of that stuff.
Right.
You got to remember, I'm young. I'm like 18, 19 years old, and I started listening to Count Basie when I saw him when I was 13.
That's
I had
amazing.
no idea. Here's a little thing. I may have told this before, but I saw Count Basie, and I told my father that's what I want to do. You know who was singing with him was a guy named Leon Thomas.
Oh, really? So it wasn't Joe Williams?
No, no.
Okay.
Joe was with him in the early 60s, and by then I would have been, I was 13 years old when I saw him at this point.
And didn't you say your father was like into jazz already?
Already. Man, he had it all. He had Bix Beiderbecke, Louis Armstrong, Henry Red Allen, you know, Fletcher Henderson, Billie Holiday, Dinah Washington.
Right.
He had all that stuff. Ray Charles, of course, because my dad's brother was from Seattle, and Ray Charles was in Seattle, and he was a huge Ray Charles. You know, so back to Count Basie real quick, then we'll get back onto California, which is more important. I look at it and I'm watching Leon Thomas sing, just the whole band. You know, Eddie Logjog Davis, Speedy Rufus Jones was on the drums, still had Walter Page on bass, Freddie Green on guitar. I knew them as a kid like baseball stats.
Wow.
You know, there's so-and-so, there's Buck Clayton, there's and I said, I want to do this. My dad goes, Curtis, he laughs like, he goes, this is music for men. You know, those are men down there. Those are real men down there, and they're playing music. You know, I had no idea with the road and a bus. He knew what was happening, what would be to get an organization of a full-on band and to play at them and what that would take. So this is music made by men. So anyhow, back to you. Let's get to us. So Gary Smith introduced me, opened it up for me, not only on what to play a harmonica, new stuff I'd never heard, new George Smith I'd never heard, you know, his experiences with it. So he had a party, and it was at, I think it was at Chris Kane's house.
Wow.
And we went over to this house, and there was, the boards were just filled with food. It was all, you know, Mexican food. And it's just like, you know, plates of enchiladas and this and that and whatever. And that's where I met Chris Kane.
Wow.
And that was a second visit.
That was when he had the Walter Fields Blues Band.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. Him and Andy Just had that band.
And Andy Just was at, that's where I met.
They played together back then.
I met Andy Just and Chris Kane at this party.
Right.
And I got up and sang my B.B. King thing.
Yeah.
You know, which isn't.
Sure they were impressed.
I was impressed with, there's a whole scene down here that wasn't happening in Eugene, Oregon. In Eugene, Oregon, our scene was cool. You know, we had, I had the Nighthawks and stuff, and Robert Cray and Richard Cousins had arrived. There was a great jazz scene in Eugene.
Did Robert and Richard live in Eugene when you met them?
Yes.
Okay.
They had just moved from Tacoma, Washington.
Okay.
And Robert is basically what they call, and no disrespect, an army brat.
Army brat, yeah.
But he was born in Germany. He was born in Germany,
wow.
And, you know, there's Fort Lewis in Tacoma.
Right.
And when Robert and Richard moved in, real quick side note here, I had this band I was in the Nighthawks, but before that I was in a band called Three Finger Jack. And in that band was a saxophone player, and that saxophone player's name was Randy Reese. And Randy Reese and I are walking down the street on a sunny day in Eugene. He goes, you know, there's these two musicians that are in town that are into the blues, and they're black. And I was really like, really? Like, how are they our age? He goes, yeah. And
Didn't seem possible.
Didn't seem possible. And it was Richard and Robert. Richard was my age, and Robert, I think, is about a half a year older than me. So Robert and I were 19 at the time.
Right.
And they had moved from Tacoma together. And those two have been together forever.
They sure have.
Yeah.
And Bobby Murray was kind of part of that circle.
Bobby Murray didn't come down to Eugene, though. I heard about him and would meet him later. Yeah. And they had a harmonica player named Rocky Manzanares, who sounded like Paul Butterfield.
Really?
Yeah. And moving on, so I met those guys. That's what's the scene in Eugene. But in California down here, bigger scene, bigger black community, you know, Sonny Rose goes, Sonny Rose, Curtis, we got to go over to my friend's house, J.J. Malone.
Curtis, I got somebody I want you to meet. There's somebody named J.J. Malone, and he's a very good friend of mine, and outstanding musician.
That's
I think you need to go over to his house right now. We're gonna tape some music.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went over to JJ's house,
yeah.
and this guy blew my mind because I remember standing there just being awestruck at the coolest voice, the sweetest, most passive man sit down at the piano, and he had a voice, and he reminded me of someone I don't know, but I really admire, and it's kind of like one of those underground heroes, is Little Johnny Jones.
Oh yeah.
That's why I grew a goatee.
Right.
It
That's
wasn't Dizzy
interesting.
Gillespie
Yeah,
or
it was
Ray
Johnny Jones.
It was
Yeah.
Little Johnny Jones and his
Yeah.
cool little bebop smokies, you know.
right.
And I just thought that was good. But man, I'm a big Johnny Jones fan. His piano playing. So for some reason, you know.
Let's take a break here, and we will come back with where you left off. Here.
Okay.
All right.
Hi, I'm Mark Hummel. I hope you're enjoying the Harmonica Party and the other content that we post on our channel. Now you can become part of the show for the price of a cheap cup of coffee. For $3 a month, you can help bring the blues and the stories to you.